Hey, y'all. Hey, Nikki.
Hey, Selena.
Did I do that backwards? I don't know.
You did, but I was thinking I need to turn my headphones down, so I was already distracted. So
Perfect.
You're good.
Well, on that note, welcome to ST&TV.
Hey, y'all.
Where Nikki does the sound. She does some dancing during. What else do you do during a?
Sometimes
recording?
I wave my shirt so I don't sweat quite so much.
Yeah.
That's happening now, too. Occasionally, I'll drink something or eat something, make noises.
Not lately, because I haven't
Very
made
busy.
squat. Really sorry about that.
Well, it's,
Sorry about that.
pressed for time.
Yeah. But also, what do you, when you have something, I've got house notes, I've got some chores. I've got
Housekeeping.
Thank you.
Also known as
God.
chores.
I knew you would know. But what I wanted to say is, because like that feels like too like heavy. And
Sure.
I've got like happy ones. I've
Got
a
some liner
happy
notes.
news.
Some liner notes for this episode.
Love it. What I wanted to say, and what I know that you'll want to say, Nikki, once I get this out, is that we want to welcome a new Patreon.
Yes. Very exciting.
We would like to welcome to the family, the sweet T&TV family,
The sweeties.
Daisha.
Daisha.
Now, Daisha, here's what
Daisha.
I'm going to say. Daisha.
Daisha.
Hey, Daisha.
Daisha.
Hey, Daisha. How long do you think we could go back and forth? An hour?
Probably a really long time because I think my brain got stuck on a loop for a second.
So what I want to say is, Daisha, because we've only gotten to see the spelling of your name, if we are incorrectly pronouncing it and we are giving you the heebie-jeebies right now, I want you to forever refer to me as Selena and Nike across the table. Nike, huh?
I like
Got any of
Nike.
that Nike money?
I like Nike.
Anyways, and you can refer to that.
Am I going
one
to get
across the
sued
table
for like
as Nike.
trademark infringement or something?
Yes, you are.
But also, call me that.
Perfect. That said, and then please do correct us and we will redo your song if it's not
Yes,
correct.
we don't want it to be wrong.
Yes, and as someone who knows of a Salina that is in Kansas, I don't really prefer that pronunciation, but I will take it.
And I do occasionally call her that just because I know that about her.
That's true.
It's the little sister in me. When I know somebody doesn't like something, I have to do it a couple times.
And the only child in me is just to go away and isolate myself.
Go into your hole.
So, Daisha, Bobesha, me, my, Fofesha, so, right, Daisha. I think I messed it up. Help me out, Nikki. Daisha,
Bobesha, banana, fana, fofascia, me,
my,
my, momesha,
Daisha.
Daisha. Was that your way of just getting me to sing it?
No, but it worked. So what we're trying to say.
So she might get it a couple of times because she got it the first time you did it. Second time I joined in. She might get it the third time when we pronounce her name the right way.
Right, because I can't remember housekeeping or the banana fana momana ranalana song. So that's just the kind of week I'm having.
Another day in paradise.
Let's hope that I remember Soapdish because that's our special episode today. If you're new to these parts, first, let us welcome you again. Welcome.
Hello.
And this episode is now a season-ending tradition where Nikki and I select and watch a movie to discuss right here with you to get you up to speed and a refresher for others, including ourselves. At the end of season 1, we watched Pretty Woman after it came to my attention that Nikki had never seen it. We couldn't have that kind of blasphemy around here. To torture me, at the end of season 2, we watched a movie I'd never seen, Howard the Duck. For season 3, Nikki picked again, this time Captain Ron, a movie that we can definitely agree was better than Howard the Duck. We watched First Wives Club at the end of season 4, an audience pick. And for season 5, we went back to the well of movies Nikki hasn't seen, and ultimately, she selected Soapdish. There's more to that story, but we'll get there. If you haven't heard of it, well, you can't say that after today. That is Soapdish. It's kind of like Howard the Duck in that it's become a bit of a cult classic, but it's watchable. Until Nikki tells me it's not, but that's okay. She'll get her turn to give you a lay of the land so you know what we're doing today.
I just feel like I'm not getting to defend myself in any of these things, and I am biting my tongue so hard.
But not that well.
Oh, my God. I had to say it before I explode. Holy moly.
That is another thing that Nikki and I hold in common. We need for people to know what is on our minds. But to give you a lay of the land for today, we're going to talk about some background for the movie. Then we're going to find out if Nikki liked it. She's already exploding over there. And then we're going to end on some trivia. Oh, and there will be spoilers. So if you've been holding on to this one for, say, 33 years, stop here and come back.
Don't let us ruin it for you.
That's right. Get that sorted. And that's it. So does that sound good?
I'm glad you always remember the spoiler alert, because we're always watching old stuff, and I'm like,
why?
I don't want to
never
ruin
know.
this, and I forget.
Yeah. But I hope it sounds good, because honestly, we're on a tight schedule. So split. Yeah.
Is it time for general thoughts and stray observations?
Just hang on tight there.
You said we got to get moving.
We'll get you there. Let's start with the plot, because, let's just get ourselves centered first.
Okay.
Let's get ourselves
We're
into the
fully
world.
going to.
We're going to get in the dish.
It. Yeah, okay.
We're going to get in the dish. Okay. So Celeste Talbert is the star of the long-running soap opera The Sun Also Sets. With the show's ratings down, Celeste's ruthlessly ambitious co-star Montana Moorhead and the show's arrogant producer David Barnes plot to aggravate her into leaving the show by bringing back her old flame Jeffrey Anderson and hiring her beautiful young niece Lori Craven. The movie has a whopper of a cast starring Sally Field, Kevin Kline, Robert Downey Jr., Whoopi Goldberg, Elizabeth Shue, Kathy Moriarty, and Kathy Najimy. But also Carrie Fisher is there, Gary Marshall is there, Terry Hatcher. It goes on and on and on. Soapdish was directed by Michael Hoffman, best known for A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Last Station, Promised Land, and the one I remember best, One Fine Day, a mid-90s meet cute starring George Clooney and Michelle Pfeiffer. I see Nikki nodding along. She also remembers as a steward of the 90s. It was written...
And rom-coms.
In rom-coms, that's right. Soapdish was written by Andrew Bergman, best known for Fletch and Blazing Saddles, and Robert Harling, who wrote Still Magnolias, so we've talked extensively about him. But it is the Still Magnolias episode that led us to Soapdish, because that's when we learned this movie was cooked up from conversations between Robert Harling and Sally Field. Robert Harling was also a writer on First Wives Club. If you're a Soapdish head and just learning about us...
I'm imagining someone with a soap dish on their head.
Good, because I'm trying to think of social media content for this one, and that might be it. Okay, yeah. So if that happens to be you, you can find our Still Magnolias episode back in season 4, episode 14, and our First Wives Club episodes, also season 4, episodes 57 and 58. Yes, that's right, people. I said episodes 57 and 58. Also, by watching this movie, we have now hit what I am going to call the Harling trifecta: Still Magnolias, Soapdish, and First Wives Club.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Thank goodness. It was released on May 31st, 1991. So coincidentally, don't worry. If you were here for the Designing Women, we'll give you some tids and some bits along the way. That's right. I said tid, T-I-D. What that means is it hit theaters just weeks after the season 5 finale of Designing Women. So it's all coming full circle, or at least half circle. If you have not watched it, it is currently streaming on HBO Max. You can also rent or buy it from Amazon, Apple TV, YouTube, Google Play, Vudu, or wherever you rent your videos.
Just Max.
So, Nikki, it's your turn. Tell the people, tell me, was Soapdish for you a must or a bust?
Oh, gosh, that's a terrible way to put it. I didn't put it in that category. I put it this way. I get why this is a cult classic for some people. Mm-hmm. I can totally see it. I think especially if you're looking for escapism. I did not realize that one of the co-writers also was on, I think you said co-writer, was also on Blazing Saddles. Mm-hmm. I didn't put that together. It has a Blazing Saddles frenetic energy. Mm-hmm. So I get that now. Mm-hmm. I think if you're looking for escapism, this makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of quotable quotes. I could see a lot of those things being like memes, or like being something that elder millennials would go back to and use as sort of like fodder as they're having conversations. Very funny quotes. The costumes are great. I think a lot of the individual performances are really great. So I get why people love it. For me, it was a really wacky watch. Like, it was all over the place. The first time I watched it, I genuinely wasn't sure what I was watching. Mm-hmm. I was so confused. I think there's a huge frame of reference that I'm missing in terms of soap operas. Like, I understand the concept of a soap opera. I understand the idea. I've never actually sat down and watched one. So I think the frame of reference was lost on me. I'm not a soap opera person. My grandmother would have them on TV. Yes. And so I know they're a thing, but I didn't sit down and watch them. So I think for a parody or a farce, something like this to really land, you have to get the thing. And I think I was missing the thing. So the first watch, it was just really confusing to me. And I put it in that bucket of like, this probably is really funny to people and I just don't get it. I'm missing something. It was really chaotic. There were just subplots on subplots, which I think is the soap opera in it, as I understand. That's just kind of how these things work. It was hard for me to follow. I couldn't figure out where to look and what I was watching and who I was looking for. So the second time I watched it, because I gave it a second watch, because I felt like there was something I was missing. This cast is obscene. The lines were so funny. There's something I'm like, I got to watch it again. So the second time I watched it, I just primed myself to focus less on all of it and the spectacle of it all and more on the things that I knew were funny. The scene with Kevin Kline at the end where he can't read the teleprompter got me. That was so hysterical. The subplot of this being his, sorry, spoiler alert, but you already apologized for that, being his daughter and you have no idea that's coming. That was incredible. So I focused on the parts that I knew I was really going to like. And the second time it was a much more enjoyable watch because I kind of knew what was coming and I kind of knew what I was watching. I'm not sure this is one that I would choose to watch over and over again, but I totally get if one, soap operas are your thing and you really want to watch satire of soap operas. I get that. Or two, if you have a tie to it from youth, which for me, a lot of early 90s movies fall into that category and like late 80s. I watched it as a kid and I have such a soft spot for it. So other people might not love it, but that's because they weren't there watching it with me. So I fully understand people who love this. Really, I get why they would love it. It was just a chaotic watch for me. And I think I'm glad I watched it a second time. I'm not sure I'd watch it more than that.
Okay. So I will just say that I think I probably saw this right around the time it came out. I don't know if I saw it actually in 1991, and I've seen it many, many, many times, although it's been a long time since I'd seen it. So I just don't think I can come into this objectively, which I think is nice for us to have the balance of the two, because I already knew I loved it. And it's not like there was only one thing I didn't entirely remember. We'll get to that because that's a big point of the movie and maybe something that doesn't land well today for very understandable reasons. But that is just my general, I guess, hey, y'all probably need to know this before we get into general thoughts or whatever. Well, you already shared a lot of general thoughts, I think.
Those are all my general thoughts, pretty much.
Well, so with that in mind, I will say on seeing it again, and probably I want to say it's probably been 20 years since I've seen it. For me, I thought this was camp at its finest. Everything, to your point, is at a level 10. It's turned all the way up. So if you like drama, and things being overly dramatic in a funny way, I think it'll work for you. If you don't, not so much. And I think it depends. It depends on who's doing it. So if it's Robert Downey Jr. doing it, he's pretty good. So I'm into that. If it's somebody that's not good, well, then it's not good. But I do think that the movie benefits from knowing exactly what it is. And that kind of, for me, deepens the funniness aspect of it. As a farce, it totally works for me. My grandma also watched soap operas all day. She would have it playing in every single room where there was a TV, and as she did housework, she would rotate from one.
Not that your grandma's crazy. The idea that was a thing at one point in time.
I know. So they did seep in for me. I would get pulled in occasionally. I think Guiding Light was one that I would occasionally get pulled into, and is probably strong, but I would at least get interested in the storylines a little bit. And so I know enough about it to understand what this movie is trying to do, in a way that's a little bit deeper in that way. But so even just the basic premise that we can find the juiciest storylines happening off of the set of the soap opera is a pretty good one for me. I thought that worked. I thought them, using that as a way to kind of draw that juxtaposition between it and an actual soap opera was really smart. And they don't pull punches for anyone. So in 1991, that's probably an unintentional fairest approach. But, the writers look like a bunch of a-holes. The actors are all a bunch of narcissists and publicity hounds. And the network brass are all opportunists. So to see them try and navigate each other and all of their egos and ids and all of whatever it is that they want and their agendas is pretty entertaining. I found it surprisingly touching. So I don't think we get that without the caliber of actors giving these really layered and nuanced performances, especially Field and Klein. So, they're also propped up by a phenomenal supporting cast that we get in Goldberg and Robert Downey Jr., whose purposeful vapidness and comedic chops really made for a delicious watch for me. I don't remember, again, the last time that I saw this movie, but it's always interesting to me how even with Designing Women, things hit differently at different ages. Mm-hmm. So I specifically Celeste hit really differently at different ages. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. So that big reveal that you mentioned earlier, where mm-hmm. we all learn that Lori is actually her, Sally Field and Kevin Kline's daughter. When that happens and then they immediately shun her after
Sally Field.
Yeah, Sally Field. Okay. After she lets everybody, after she, in the worst way possible, tells everyone. As a kid, I distinctly remember feeling bad for her. And it's still a hard watch today, but now you see that Celeste also holds and bears some responsibility for the decision making there, and mm-hmm. you see why people are upset. But watching it now, I feel bad for an entirely different reason, which is, yes, she is incredibly selfish, and the movie tells you that in a ton of ways, including the artwork of herself around her house, right. which is a great touch. But also her retelling also highlights a crappy reality for so many women, especially then, but still now, which is they basically made her pick the kid or the career. Mm-hmm. And so the show was completely unsupportive of her having a child. That's what she says right there on the stage. She felt all alone and her life was over, and to save her career, she ultimately completely isolates herself. It's played like a joke, but it's actually a devastating thing.
Yeah, and I felt really bad for her character there.
That is something that at 6, I couldn't really pick up on.
Yeah.
So just to go back to that thing of wow, watching it as a 38-year-old, it hits mm-hmm. in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And then I'll just say my last thing here was I'm 3 for 3 on Robert Harling movies that make me cry. I know you're you've got to be kidding me. But even this one got me teary-eyed. It happened when Celeste agreed to undergo the brain transplant during the broadcast. Now here, hold on. So here's why. Because she's letting her daughter have it. She is going to die on the only thing she's ever really stayed a part of and give that main role to her daughter. And that's what this really is. I think there is an argument that her undoing across this movie is really her learning to stop being selfish and start thinking about the other people around her. It's a very big task for the most selfish among us. I say that as an only child. And maybe I could see that a little bit more as an only child.
Yeah, it was sweet. It was sweet. I think that's just what I struggled with the whole movie. It was is it funny? Is it crazy? I don't know. I'm glad I watched it again, because that's the other thing that I think is a shame about a movie like this. There was so much going on that I feel for a casual moviegoer in 1991 Memorial Day weekend heading to the box office, if you only get to watch it one time and you're not the world's biggest soap opera fan or the world's biggest Blazing Saddles wackiness kind of fan, you're going to walk out and maybe think what did I just watch? That was horrible. I'm going to go watch What About Bob next weekend, because that came out the same weekend. I found that out because that's my favorite of the two.
Great movie.
So I think that's sort of the shame, and part of why I say I think it might have a renaissance, because I think in rewatching and in streaming and what we have now, I think people have an opportunity to dig in a little bit more, take their time watching it. And I think there are layers to it. I think which is why I say like so many subplots, I didn't know where to look, because when you watch the second time, you get an entirely different subplot and you say like, oh, that was cool. So I think that's sort of a shame about something like this, but also its benefit.
Like when you talk to someone who's like smarter than you and 10 minutes later, you realize that you missed 3 things.
You missed all the things they were saying. That's exactly what it is.
I do think what's interesting is it may have been a little ahead of its time in terms of pacing. That quick, pithy.
I think you might be right.
I think we were headed in that direction already by that time point, but I don't think we were quite to this level.
And I think that might have been what kept me going watching it, because it felt so fast paced. And like I felt like every second I was going to get something new. So if I wasn't loving it in this moment, in a couple minutes, I'm going to laugh at something. And so I think the pacing really helped me watch it the first time. And then again, the second time, like I don't at all want this to feel like I thought it was a terrible movie. No, I mean, it's not one I'd rewatch over and over again, but there were definitely great parts to it. And definitely I can see where people would love this movie. So I think I'm just missing like some cerebral like connection to it. But I could see where people would like it. And if they remade it, I probably would watch it, because the other thing I realized is Jane the Virgin. I've watched that. That also is a parody of soap operas, Mexican soap operas, which I've never really watched either. But it's so self-aware, and also such a storytelling. There's so much storytelling to it. I watched like the first 2 seasons of that and really enjoyed it. I didn't need that frame of reference. This felt different in some way. So I don't know if it's the movie structure of it. Like if it played out over time more slowly, maybe I would have dug in a little bit more. So if they were to remake it, or if they were to re-envision it, I might enjoy it more the second time.
Right. Definitely the difference between a movie and a TV show too.
For sure.
Because there's just not time.
For sure.
Which is always why I've said it 1,000 times on here. I just kind of opt for TV shows now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say one thing, as you were talking about how frenetic it is. One thing that I noticed, like seeing it now, is I thought the introduction of Kevin Kline's character was really abrupt. Like super abrupt. They just sort of drop him in watching as we're seeing the opening.
Yeah.
But with no context for who he is. While he's doing like that dinner theater, and he's watching her accept the award, Celeste accept the award on TV at the daytime Emmys or whatever. And so like they were slowly revealing who he was, but I thought they could have made that a little smoother.
It's so funny you say that, because
what's your favorite part?
My last general reaction is Kevin Kline was my favorite part of this movie, and that's saying a lot, because I love Sally Field, I love Whoopi Goldberg. I think they were both great in this. Yeah. He was really good. But the second reason that's really funny is because I had a passing thought along those lines on the second rewatch, and actually I ended up falling on the side of it kind of matches with what happens with Lori. You have this very there's absolutely zero reason we put together that Lori would ever be Sally Field's niece, much less her daughter, until that very abrupt interaction they have on screen when they're filming, when she's the girl coming through and Sally Field spooning into her bowl. It's almost it's the parallel character introduction, which I think was intentional. Yes. So I think when I rewatched it and rethought it, I felt like, oh, it makes a little more sense. But the first time I watched it, I was like, why would you do that? Why would you just dump him in there? It's Kevin Kline. Like, make something of that.
Yeah, they definitely were I noticed that because I watched it twice, and they were definitely doing a lot of like full circle moments, whether it was her speech that she winds up trying to give to Lori at the end.
Yes.
Or if it was, or towards the middle, or like the hand thing with Kevin Kline.
Oh my God.
There was so many of those different things where it would come. So you really have to be paying attention. It almost felt like, and the way it worked, I believe, and I hope I'm getting this right, is Harling like did the initial stab. Bergman came back in and kind of did a touch up on everything. So I think you can feel that a little bit, that like coming back, he probably came back in and made those smoothing touches. I think for some people that probably works. For some people, maybe that feels too perfect, like too much of a button. I don't know. So,
well, I think we needed the buttons to tie all the stuff that was happening together. So I think I liked that. Yeah. Did you have some stray observations?
I have 3.
Okay.
So I just need to say, for the record, that Kathy Moriarty will always be the scary lady in Casper for me.
That's my second stray observation. This was the exact same character.
Yeah.
This was
pretty
the
much.
exact same
Yeah.
character scheming in a very physical way through the whole movie.
Yeah, just
And
irate on 12.
it's Casper is one of those movies that holds such a soft spot for me.
Same.
Even rewatching it though, I think it holds up pretty well. But that character, it's like down to the voice and everything. I just felt like I was watching the exact same character. It's impressive, truly.
Truly.
She's so shrill.
So Paul Johansson, who plays Bolt, her on-screen husband, Sally Field's on-screen husband, he'll always be Dan Scott from One Tree Hill for me.
Oh, I don't know that reference.
Right, you didn't watch One Tree Hill.
Yeah.
He's like the evil dad. So, anyways,
Soap opera-y, if you
and
will.
then and then in case we haven't clearly enough defined ourselves as elder millennials, may those two references stand for today. And then I also, when Lori first appears on the scene, I just need to say she's wearing a delivery uniform from the 1930s, like holding balloons.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't understand what was happening there. And then I always like to check in on the money points. So Edmund Edwards, he's the programmer, network director, played by Gary Marshall, says he's paid $1.2 million to make the tough decisions. Well, today that would be $2.7 million, and I gotta say, I would have thought it would have been more.
I just was thinking that. I would have expected more.
Yeah, I bet you they do make more. I'm thinking it's at least $5 million.
Yeah,
Probably more.
yeah.
So,
my third stray observation is sort of again another elder millennial reference. That big reveal at the end with Moorhead, her first name I'm blanking on, Montana Moorhead, felt very Ace Ventura to me. And that was my very first reaction when I watched this not my first reaction, but when I watched it the first time, that was my first kind of overarching reaction was, wow, that does not hold up today. No. And it's the same that we've rewatched Ace Ventura recently. It's the exact same thing that doesn't hold up then.
it feels like maybe they stole that. It's like, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It was a lot.
Yeah.
My last stray observation was that I do think for everything that was going on, there were two pieces that really were not fully fleshed out.
Okay.
Or I felt like I wanted to see more. The Rose-Celeste relationship, so between Sally Field and Whoopi Goldberg, like they were clearly besties and clearly devoted to each other. Okay, now I don't know besties in the sense of like going out for drinks on a Friday night, or if it truly was just writer-actor tie. But they did do some gossiping midstream about this relationship that fell apart for Celeste. And she was clearly a confidant for Celeste. And I was just like, what happened here? What happened here? And where's the rest of this story? Because I wanted to know if Celeste has this history of nothing but pushing people away. How did she end up in such a close relationship with Rose? And what is their agreement? I wanted more from that. I wanted to understand that. Along similar lines, though this is much less important to me, the costume designer Tawny, what was the deal there? I did not follow that at all.
Does it feel like in both cases maybe we had some things sliced out of the final edit?
I thought for sure with Tawny, because there was something like Sally Field was like super mean to her, fired her. There was this weird interaction between Tawny and Robert Downey Jr. where he says, well, actually he says, "You're fired." Just kidding, something. Like what? I didn't understand that. And then Sally Field is like yelling at her, and then she stops herself. And then in the next scene, she's just cutting up all the clothes. It felt like there were things missing there. One thing they did do is they came back at the end, and now Lori had an issue with Tawny,
right?
With the stupid hat,
the turban.
Yeah, so that was kind of creative and cool.
Dang it, Tawny! No turbans.
No, nothing on the head. Apparently,
That's
just
right.
Nothing on the head. But I just felt like for everything that was going on, how did we still have things that felt incomplete?
Yeah,
and so I would have liked more of that. But that was my last stray.
Okay. Well, want to get into some likes?
Yes. The interactions between the cast at the Daytime Television Awards at the beginning, where you think they're all getting along. Speaking of like this slow burn reveal, where you think they're all getting along, and then Celeste gets on stage to accept her award, and all the other characters are calling her name until I think maybe it was Montana who finally just says, "I hate her so much."
Yeah.
I just loved that. I love that sort of like petty dramaness, and I love the way that they played that was just really funny.
Oh yeah,
I thought
absolutely iconic for this movie.
I also think that the cast, I mean, you can't say enough about the people that they amassed for this movie. It was truly impressive. You don't get an ensemble cast like that very often. And it was just like, if I hadn't known the cast list going in, watching the opening credits, I'd have been like, what am I watching right now? Like, this is obscene.
Right.
I have it like later in trivia or something, but the number of Academy Awards among this cast, the number of like amazing awards just among this one cast is incredible. And I really appreciate that.
The number of awards grew between the time that we chose Soapdish and we're getting to execute.
It's crazy, right?
It is.
These are heroes.
It is. I think so. I only have one thing that falls on the outside of it. It's either quotes for me of things that I liked, or like making fun of soap operas, and then like a lot of Celeste stuff. So I just really like the title sequence at the beginning with the pop art and everything. It kind of put me back in that First Wives Club mode.
First Wives Club, Clueless.
Yes.
This, because even in First Wives Club, I think we talked about that.
We did.
Yeah.
And I like that, even though maybe it hasn't aged as well, because it just needs probably a little bit of smoothing, the way that the bubbles on Soapdish like went from cartoon and spilled out into the real, like I thought it was a very cute idea. So in terms of other things, like the quotes that I loved, Terry Hatcher, after Jeffrey says that she has beautiful eyes, and she goes, "They're nothing compared to my tits." Sorry, it's a quote. It's fine. David calls and says, "I need another homeless, but like good looking one. This batch is disgusting." Okay, that's hilarious, because definitely even today, everyone is too good looking to be in one place, and we all know it.
Yeah.
The writer's room scene dialogue we hear is really something. It's definitely poking at itself in like this world. It was kind of making me think of 30 Rock, which I think is like the epitome of like writer's room depiction. So even though these were self-aware, I'm guessing there are a few that don't make the cut today. It literally opens and someone is saying, Ariel should be raped by Father Corey. Like just crazy things,
right.
You know? And so they call that out like just automatically. But because I do think writers' rooms are supposed to be like this free flow, no holds barred. Sure. I just can't imagine the crazy stuff that gets said. So I'm glad
think about that on
leaned
SNL.
into it. Oh my God, I can't even imagine
the stuff that gets left behind.
That's right. That's right. Whew. And then, but some straight up just funny ones in the room is Claude is determined to attend Steve's funeral in a motorized wheelchair he operates while blowing into a tube. And then, when are we going to put someone in a coma? And then Rose says, actors don't like being put in comas. They feel it limits their range. Just good stuff. Good stuff there. Did you have any other likes?
I think I would say maybe two more things. One, the interactions between Sally Field and Whoopi Goldberg I really liked, which may be part and parcel to why I feel like their storyline wasn't explored as much as I personally would have liked, because they at one point they're talking about Adam. I have his name written down, the guy that left, and they just turn into girls like gossiping and chattering about what's happening. And I just really liked watching them with one another, because Celeste she is, what did he call her? Gary Marshall called her like a magnet for
the most tragic character,
exactly,
of all
like
time or something.
a magnet for bad news.
Right.
And just to see her with a productive relationship was really nice. I loved that. And then that live scene at the end with Kevin Kline, and he's got the tassel that just keeps landing on his head.
It's totally on my list.
He can't read the screen.
Scene.
It's just everything about it was probably like super, what's the word? Like super low hanging fruit. Like that's the laziest form of comedy, is just like to have all these misfires or whatever. But I just loved it so much.
But it's like not, because he's also flubbing those lines at
right.
the same time.
At the same time.
I was actually thinking, how the heck did they do all that at the same time?
Yeah.
Like, because it had to have been intentional. It just
yes.
had to have been with the
or
lantern.
if it happened like one time and they were like, that's
keep
good,
it.
let's
Yeah.
keep it.
Yeah.
But I was watching for inconsistencies there in case it reflected like multiple takes where it was there and then it wasn't. I was just curious. I would have loved the behind the scenes on that scene. But that was a top favorite for me.
I think I could have watched like the soap opera-ness of it all like over and over again, just because for me that's just so hilarious, because soap operas are so over the top and so many of the storylines get crazy because they're doing it every day.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Designing Women where like 26 episodes is ridiculous.
Right.
It's just too much. I mean, it's literally like a gazillion episodes.
Right.
And I think
you have to
some
start
point,
bringing back
like,
people from death.
God, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But I will say the last thing that really cracked me up was the knife that they gave Lori for the murder scene. And it's like a sword.
A machete.
Yeah.
She's like, it's really big.
Not on the TV. It's fine. So I just have to talk about the high drama of that is Celeste. I think I love Sally Field in this role. She is having such a good time. Just going to return to the fact that like she didn't really get to take on roles like this. Normally she's like America's sweetheart. I think I'll talk about that a little later again, but just like you just seeing her from scene to scene, flailing herself around, throwing herself down, but it's not done in a serious way, like in a Still Magnolias or something where it rips your heart out. In this case, it's meant to make you laugh. I just think she is like, she's doing such a good job.
The same way that Kathy Moriarty, hearing her voice makes me think of the lady from Casper. Hearing Sally Field cry makes me think of Steel Magnolias because it's like a, like it's a very staggered staccato sort of cry. Yes. And it felt like that scene at the graveyard. And it's so incredible to me how context matters so much because it's the exact same cry in very different circumstances. And I laughed at one and I sobbed at one. I just find that incredible.
Yeah. I mean, her mall stop for the autograph giving baby kissing self-esteem boost. And then that's how to circle back to what you were saying about her and Rose. I think that's one of the things that works because you can tell that she gets on Rose's nerves. And why, in someone that's selfish, how could they not?
Right.
But at the same time, she still loves her and she still sees the good in her. I liked it when they were sitting together too. And they're like, she's like calling herself a home wrecker and old, and Rose is like saying it with her at the same time. She's like, yes, you are a home wrecker and you are kind of old.
It must be tough to be you.
You're right. Just not an ounce of self-awareness when they're talking about Adam who left her, the audacity to leave her to go back to his wife and kids in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh.
So the Celeste coming apart. So first she's standing in front of the bus who throws on the brakes so riders can get her autograph. She has her temper tantrum on the couch, but her breakdown, you already mentioned this, and we have to mention some of the big steps that happened here. So when Jeffrey is about to kiss Lori, her breakdown is epic.
It's incredible.
She flies down to the set, bites the camera operator, screams and runs full speed, jumps on Jeffrey's back with the camera still rolling, and then dramatically retells every secret she's ever held for the past 21 years in front of crew, fellow actors.
Lisa Gibbons,
for God's sake. It's just amazing. And I just loved every moment of that.
I loved when she tried to talk to Lori. It was all in that same scene. She tried to talk to Lori and Lori like snaps at her and Sally Field like jumps and her eyes get really big. It was just really incredible, like physical comedy.
Yeah.
That entire, and I love the physical comedy. That entire undoing, I really appreciated.
Yeah.
That was a good one. That was good. Are you ready to talk about things we didn't like?
Sure.
I think I've already shared that it's not so much a dislike. It's a personal, like, again, there's something missing in my brain that I feel like there was just a piece that's missing for me with the reference to soap operas. But in rewatching it, I was able to luxuriate in the parts that did resonate with me and think less about that. So I think it sort of requires you to have some frame of reference. And I feel like sometimes if that's the way a movie works, it's just not going to appeal to some subsection of people, which is fine. Not everything appeals to everybody. I also felt like maybe Whoopi Goldberg was a little underutilized, but maybe that's because I'm used to seeing her as a starring character. And in this role, she was very supporting, in my opinion. There was that part where he said something about colored people in the writing room, and she just like repeats it back and sort of rolls her eyes, which to me felt very un-Whoopi Goldberg. Like, that's not where that's going to end. And so I feel like she, as a character, would have had to have some element of backbone to have argued her way up to that table, because there were lots of white men, lots of old men, and her and Carrie Fisher. So even like thinking about career, she would have had to have a backbone and a voice. And I just felt like that short shrifted her character a little bit.
Yeah.
Same thing happened when Gary Marshall was in the room later.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like it's so the 1991 of it too.
Maybe, but Whoopi Goldberg as a character, like as an actor, was so much more vocal than that, and so much more like out there
in some roles. In other roles, she was also in The Color Purple. So
well, but that's
but
different.
like I feel like then when they have all the white men at the table, I don't even know that was on purpose. I think that was 1991.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the nose the way it is in like Barbie.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I get that.
So, yeah.
I get that. It just felt there was something they weren't doing with her that I felt like it didn't meet my expectation.
Always take more Whoopi Goldberg. We do get much more of her the following year.
Yeah.
Perhaps her best role ever in Sister Act. So,
Sister Mary Claire.
Which also brings her and Kathy and Jimmy back together again.
And, the thing with Tawny probably also is reflective of me just loving Kathy and Jimmy. Yeah. I just think she's so funny and she's so great. Funny. And she was such a like flash, blink and you miss it in this movie. Yeah. So they're casual dislikes. They're more like personal preference.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think that we're going to talk about the one that's not casual. And we've already alluded to it. The ending is obviously tough in 2024. To call out someone who has transitioned on live television is like horrific and terrifying. And it just doesn't land like a joke, And to make them the villain of the whole story. It was probably very weird. Yes, and to make them the villain of the whole story, absolutely.
I imagine that like sideswiped people at the end of watching this movie.
This is like the part I didn't really remember. I kind of remembered the gist, but I didn't remember the why. Like why the movie made that decision. I didn't remember it being on the face of things as like this way to prove that Jeffrey couldn't have gotten Montana pregnant, which was like, to your point, an E plot at that point.
Right.
G? I don't know.
I got lost.
Yeah. So, and I have to check myself because Montana is clearly the villain of the movie, her and Robert Downey Jr. So do we care that her feelings got hurt on live TV when she was trying to ruin 3 people's lives the whole time? And ultimately where I landed was that it's less about the character and more about what I think you were just about to get to, which is the writer's motivation, whether that's conscious or subconscious, to make the villain of this entire thing someone who's transitioned. Mm-hmm. I think in the early 90s, you already mentioned Ace Ventura. It was incredibly easy to pin things on these marginalized and misunderstood groups. And I don't think people even knew to think about the repercussions of that. I just don't think we were there yet. Like society wasn't there yet. The culture wasn't there yet. And I'll tell you the other thing to me is that actually is what feels like lazy writing to me. Because it feels like shock jock. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what to do, so here's a penis I'll throw in there. Yeah.
What I will say, a redeeming factor in any of it is that they didn't then focus on Robert Downey Jr.'s outsized reactions to have been attracted to this person like they did in Ace Ventura. Yeah. When you rewatch that, there's like a whole scene of Jim Carrey like crying in the shower, burning his skin and everything because of how gross it is. So at least they didn't do that with Robert Downey Jr. I think there was a really brief, like he covered his mouth when he found out. Right. But then I also think there was like a throwaway comment later and I didn't see it on the rewatch, so I can't remember it. Mm-hmm. But something like, well, maybe that's why something, like maybe that's why I was attracted to this person. I don't remember. But something that wasn't quite so like, oh, how disgusting. Right. I also appreciated that they didn't like put Kathy Moriarty in men's clothes and like cut her hair off or something weird when they get to the end. They just showed the name on the marquee of the same place where Jeffrey, what's his name? Jeffrey had been early in the movie.
Right. So. Which is also weird that like, because that happened, that she's going to transition back. Right. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
I also just wanted to say, like, returning to the early 90s and what was going on then, it was that same year in 91 that we wind up getting one of the most infamously transphobic characters in cinema history, which is Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. So just to say that there's like something weird was going on at the time, So I read some pretty angry reactions to the ending of Soapdish when I was doing my research, and that is both okay and understandable. Anger is a totally acceptable emotion. And I don't have a clue what it's like to have that experience except for the more empathetic side of my nature. That said, I really do wish that we'd stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think the movie can still be enjoyed. And instead of canceling it outright, can we like learn from it?
So I actually saw a lot of that in trying to do some research about it and just to understand the cultural context. It actually seems to have become an LGBTQ cult
Yes.
classic in particular.
Yes.
And I do find that, or I found a lot of folks would say, like, aside from its horribly transphobic ending, there's some really funny lines. It really holds up. It's camp at its classic. So I
By
do
like
think,
writers, right?
and fans.
Okay.
And fans.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Because I mainly saw, like, I didn't see writers not be, because writers are more like what you're saying, more of like a balanced approach. I think what I saw was more like on Letterboxd.
Oh, yeah. I saw a lot of the reviews on this. And again, their currents were like really glowing. They really love it. And it would be a lot of like user reviews. And it would be a lot of like, I mean, aside from that really terrible thing that happens at the ending.
Right.
And that kind of sucks, kind of ruins part of the movie. But for the most part, I really felt like most people really weren't doing that, which gets you to that point of like the vocal small minority of
Right.
people who are just like, we can't watch any of this because it's garbage. I would be curious to know the writers' sort of motivation behind that, how they react to it today. Because I think ultimately that's what matters is looking back on it. Would you still have made that choice? And not just because you feel like the public would have turned on you, but because you see now that was probably not a great choice.
Right.
I couldn't find any of that, but I would hope.
I bet you they don't want to answer that because I feel like no matter how they answer, they're going to feel attacked on the other end. But I would like to know the answer. Absolutely, I would. And that's what, again, like, it's like, I think it's so important to have these conversations. And if we, like the general we would like go just a little easier and not like just so angry about everything all the time, maybe people would be more willing to step forward and have those conversations.
Well, I'll tell you, my first reaction watching it was just pure shock that that was the ending. I had to reorient myself to the fact that this was 1991. It took me a second to reorient to time, context, and also the fact that your first reaction doesn't have to be the end result, which is why I rewatched it, because I felt like there's stuff I'm missing here. And I think that's sometimes what happens is people's reaction becomes the answer. And I agree with you. I think just stop it. Maybe that last 10 minutes of the movie.
Right.
Fast forward just a smidge and just forget how it all comes apart.
And just listen to someone like me who's never written a movie and just let's remember not to use lazy endings.
That's true. That's true.
Just.
That's what I'll tell myself on my next movie.
Yes.
Don't use a lazy ending.
Same.
She was so unlikable otherwise. They genuinely did not need to do that.
Right.
It could have been any. Like it could have been, there's so many other options that could have been.
Right. I do think I could see a lot of fun being had with this today, and I would probably set it in reality TV instead.
Yeah.
So
that might resonate more with me. Maybe. I don't watch a lot of reality TV either, but I might get it. You ready to talk about references?
I am.
So I think your notes to this said these can be Southern, 90s, or otherwise.
Yes.
That did not stop me from breaking them into 90s or dated references and references to talk about. Because that's how my brain works.
Okay.
Do you, but you don't have to break them up that way. You want me to start us off or you want to start?
So you can start, but I'll just say I can try to
You
break
don't have
mine
to.
up like that, but you probably don't want to wait for me to try and do that in my head.
Well, let me do it this way. Okay, so my 90s are dated references. I think the whole, and I think you just referenced this, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. Oh my God, look at this. This is a note I wrote 2 weeks ago. I kind of think the entire movie about soap operas is a little dated. They're definitely still a thing. People still watch, but I think today's version might be a little more reality TV based in order to have broad relevance. So look at that. I think just in general that the soap opera, certainly people who still watch them, certainly people who would get it. I think there's something about that glorious time period of the late 80s, early 90s, your grandma watching them on all the TVs in the house. It really resonated back then.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd have to be a little different.
And then most of them have been canceled now, I think. Or like
Have they?
only air like online or something. Or
Oh, I didn't know that. I
mean,
probably
a
should have looked into
ton
that.
of them have been canceled. I just remember seeing this in like real time, and someone can correct me if they would like. But yeah, I just don't think they are still there. But to your point, they're just not nearly as prominent as they once were.
Every now and then, something will come across like entertainment news and it'll be like, so-and-so of all my children or whatever. And I'm like, that's still on the air? But I think you're right. I do vaguely remember Days of Our Lives or something, maybe recently airing its final episode or something. That feels vaguely familiar. There was also a part early in the movie where when we talked about the turban, she lost it over saying she looked like Gloria Swanson.
Oh, yeah.
And I needed to understand why Gloria Swanson in the turban. Apparently, it's a reference to Sunset Boulevard. You know this? 1950. Swanson plays an aging former A-list star who is far over the hill but still considers herself to be glamorous. Let me tell you, we've talked before about how those old Hollywood movies are like crazy dark and insane. This movie is insane. It's
I haven't
wild.
seen it, but I know the parameters.
It is wild.
Yeah.
She considers herself to be glamorous and is like deluded about it to a crazy point. So that was the reference to the turban and Gloria Swanson. Gloria effing Swanson. During the writers' roundtable discussion, Edmund Edwards, so Gary Marshall's character, compares his show's ratings to that of Laguna Beach. I did a double take again.
Oh, yeah.
Given the reality TV, Laguna Beach is the reality TV that resonates with me because I did watch that in real time, and The Hills, which is a very serious early aughts reference, elder millennials and whatnot.
Just regular millennials.
I think it's a total coincidence. This was 13 years before Laguna Beach ever aired. I think it's a total coincidence. It was just really, it was a reference that caught my ear, and I was like, wait, what?
It is. I think the only reason it didn't catch my ear is because in doing the research before I watched, I saw someone mention Laguna Beach specifically.
Yeah.
And like, was it like forecasting?
Oh, maybe.
Like yeah, maybe.
We also had a Tammy Faye Baker reference early in the movie when they were talking about wardrobe, so I had to bring that one in.
Yeah, on that, like they hit on the Dalai Lama too, which is another extra sugar thing that we've done.
Probably.
So, I know you remember Dolly versus Dolly. And so just tacking on into your 90s references, I mean, it's just, it can't help but be in and of itself a giant 90s reference.
Yeah.
And I actually have in here, even soap operas as a cultural touchstone is dated. So we're just like also with the answering machine and the piles and piles of snail mail and the malls and just all that. So also a 90s reference and something I think we've talked about on the show in references before. Lori insists it's very subtle. Lori insists she's staying after she first comes on screen and she says, read my lips. And Celeste says, don't read my lips. Don't say that, which is a subtle Bush reference. And Jeffrey says to Celeste, give them my best in Paramus. After saying, what are you in such a hurry for? Got to go to the mall. And I didn't know what Paramus was. Did you?
New Jersey, the big mall.
Yeah.
You know why I know that? Because in the early 90s, I mean, the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of artists would go, like pop artists would perform there. And I always, in my mind, Paramus, New Jersey has the most amazing mall and the only mall I ever want to go to. Like Mall of America wise.
Funny.
Like
Right.
I think Britney Spears maybe performed there. NSYNC performed there. I just remember on MTV they would always be like, and they're performing today at the Paramus Mall in New Jersey. So
okay.
I knew what that one was.
In my thought, like I certainly didn't know what Paramus was when I was younger. And so I thought it was always like a hit for her being like, oh, you're a woman, you love the mall. And it's definitely like he knows her well enough to know that she has to go get
I could see that in the
fix.
second. Yeah, I could see that in the second time they mention it.
Surely the Judy Garland decor in Montana Moorhead's dressing room was some kind of a cheeky hint of things to come. And I can't watch this movie without thinking about Elizabeth Shue and Adventures in Babysitting. Like I just literally can't explain how that movie meant absolutely everything to me when I was little. And I just, between this and Karate Kid and Adventures in Babysitting, like I just wanted to be Elizabeth Shue.
In my head, Elizabeth Shue just sort of like went away. She had a moment and went away. And I didn't even know that her filmography was very deep at all. And I don't know why. I don't know what put this in my head that she like did a few movies in the late 80s and then just disappeared. So I saw her name in this one and I was like, oh, like she's done a lot more than I even realized. Like one of those people that just, you get this thing in your head about them. And then when you start digging, you realize how wrong you are.
Oh my God. She was on The Boys, which is like a one of the raunchiest things I've ever seen. It's on Amazon. It's like the dark side of superheroes. Like if superheroes were actually,
I think I know this.
yeah,
I think I know this.
So, and she's in that show, and I will never look at Elizabeth Shue the same again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that show is, I mean, I like it, but I would never suggest it for you. Don't you watch it. It's not.
I think I've seen it.
Really?
I didn't watch all of it.
Oh yeah. I see you getting through like one scene and you're done. But that's why I like to know my audience.
Like
so,
I think Kyle has watched it. I think.
Probably. My last one that I have to say is I did have some Designing Women adjacent references. So just before Lori delivers the balloons at the studio, a bunch of actors' resumes and headshots are put in the trash. Did you find any of this?
I didn't look at it.
Okay. So,
well, one of them I saw in trivia. But.
Right. So one of those was Douglas Barr, a.k.a. Colonel Bill Stillfield, a.k.a. Charlene's husband. I just thought that was so funny that like it's the same year. It's the same time the last time we'll see him on Designing Women. And then I think it's actually Robert Downey Jr.'s character that says this, but this is like early in the movie. You hear someone go, What do you think this is? CVS? Huh? While they're shuffling things around on the set. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was really funny given all of our comments about the Designing Women set and how it leaves much to be desired. So that's my references. We do have some movie trivia to talk about. I think maybe we had both done our own research, so I don't want to steal anything away from you.
I only do research just in case there's something that sticks out to me and you don't mention it. So you lead it, and if there's anything I want to add in, I will add it in.
Okay, so just to talk that Soapdish didn't really do all that well. We think we've alluded to that, it being more of like more of a phenomenon now than it was then. Mm-hmm. So it grossed $36 million worldwide at the time. That's $82 million today. So for comparison, that's what Dune 2 just recently made on its opening weekend domestically versus a whole theatrical run. So not that great. The movie didn't just reunite Sally Field and Robert Harling. It also reunited both of them with Still Magnolias director Herbert Ross, who was an executive producer on Soapdish. We talked about this pretty extensively in our Still Magnolias episode, but basically Ross had a pretty toxic reputation on that set, and it had reportedly been so bad that for Soapdish, they actually had to draw up a contract where Field could have him let go if he made her uncomfortable in any way. So luckily, as the story goes, they seem to be getting along much better this time.
Did you also stumble across the fact that it reunited them with Janice Van Meter from Steel Magnolias?
No, who's that?
She's the lady that's dancing at the wedding, and Dolly Parton says, I haven't left the house without Lycra on these thighs since I was 11 years old.
Yes.
That's Janice Van Meter. So apparently she was in this movie. She played housewife. I could not figure out who that was, but she played a character in this movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Maybe someone at the mall.
I do know. I do. I saw her. So is Sally Field there? It's at the mall. She's sitting there and if it's who I think it is, she's like signing it. And the lady is spelling out loud her name as she's like writing it down.
Seems right to me.
And it's like right at the end. And it is a very it is a fairly tight shot on her face.
Which is probably why she got a credit. I'll say I ended up looking at her credits because then I looked at her picture and I was like, she's so familiar to me otherwise. I was just sure she was in Designing Women at some point. She was not, but she was in Golden Palace, which is the Golden Girls spinoff, and like every other TV show you've ever thought of.
Yeah.
And she passed in 2020, I think.
Oh, dang it.
She was really old.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Hopefully she was old.
Yes.
Not
very
young.
old.
And hopefully she had a lovely life. She has one of those faces. And that's why as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my God.
You know who she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was apparently a good bit of improv, especially from Kevin Kline and Robert Downey Jr.
Which is what made me wonder about that like last scene where he's misreading the teleprompter. The thing is on his face. Like I think some of that just happened naturally and they were like, just go with it.
I really wish they had spelled out more of what it is. This is why I want one of those retrospectives or something for this movie, the way that they have for every other movie when it turns like 30.
Right.
Now it did turn 30 during the pandemic, and maybe that just left that off the table. I don't know. But I will tell you that I am glad that they cut one of Downey's suggestion, which was that his character have a urine fetish. So I think sometimes this is what I'm saying, where like people are like ratcheting each other up, you know.
Yeah.
You also just need that last person to come in and be like, I cut that
Too far.
yeah.
We've gone too far.
It's just not really that funny. The voice of Adam on the answering machine, did you recognize it or run across this in your trivia?
I ran across it in the trivia. I didn't listen enough to recognize it.
Yeah, so that's Kevin Spacey. Another thing that hasn't aged well. 3 actors actually starred in real daytime soap operas. So Kevin Kline was in Search for Tomorrow, Terry Hatcher in Capital, and Paul Johansson in Santa Barbara. I'm going to tell you, I've not heard of any of those.
No, but maybe it's because they made this movie. They cut those shows, but they knew of which they spoke, so that's good.
That's right. The costumes were designed, you mentioned those earlier, by Nolan Miller, who also worked on Dynasty. So that's also also a designing women adjacent thing. They love Dynasty. In fact, they love Dynasty in Dallas. But in fact, some costumes were Dynasty hand-me-downs.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I wouldn't
Sally
know.
Field,
I never watched it, but
that last scene where they're walking to film the live episode, she's wearing this yellow drop waist dress and she has a yellow bow in her hair. It is the cutest outfit ever. I just couldn't. Every time I saw that one, I was like, that is so cute.
Well, she's just also really cute too.
She's super
I'm sure
cute.
she hates hearing that, but she's just little and petite.
Yeah.
Did you know that they call Kevin Kline Kevin D. Kline?
No.
Okay. So they were surprised that he agreed to take on this role. He doesn't like that nickname.
Wait, sorry. Who calls him that?
Like they. Like the industry. Yeah.
Okay.
So he doesn't like that nickname, by the way. So Kevin,
yeah.
if you're listening, I'm very sorry. I just want to get to the things that you've not taken on. Most famously.
Okay. Sorry.
Decline.
I was he's declining roles. I was thinking like declining career or something. And I was like, wait, what? Kevin Kline. I'm trying to process through my mental Rolodex.
I'm glad that you said that, because if someone else took it that way, no, not what I mean. Like he just was turning down
turned stuff down. Oh, interesting.
Left and right. Yeah. So I thought you might find this interesting if it didn't come up for you. So most famously, he turned down the role of Batman, which goes on to star Michael Keaton. How do you feel about that?
I could not see him in that role.
Yeah.
That's hard for me to process.
That one's hard for me. He also declined or otherwise lost out on. There's like one story that goes that basically he talked himself out of a role in Jaws.
In Jaws.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but As Good as It Gets, and so I guess it's Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. Body Heat, Chicago, Death Becomes Her. I could see that.
Oh, he would have been great in that role. It's this character again. It's this character.
Jaws, which we already mentioned, and then Misery.
Oh, interesting.
I could see him in Misery. I think he's so good, and I think it's because he did so much stage acting and I don't know, he's just really talented. What a hot take.
Kevin Kline.
Talented. Yeah.
Well, did you
heard it here first?
Is this going to be in your notes that this movie made him drop from Hook? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is going to be the casting what ifs, because I wanted to ask you. So apparently, like, I wanted to see like what was happening with the extensive reshoots. I wonder if some of that had to do with the writing, or I don't know. And I couldn't find anything solid, but I wanted to get your take. So if Kevin Kline plays Peter Pan in Hook, does that work for you? Does that not work for you? What do you think?
That's really that's one of those things that's hard to be objective about, because that's Robin Williams. So that's really challenging to be objective about. For me, I couldn't see that.
So it's so funny for me, because like if I hadn't spent some time watching Kevin Kline in something lately, my first reaction would be absolutely not. Mm-hmm. But in this, I see him do so many things where he's like, he starts out and he's this real depressed, angry character, and then you see him lighten over the course, which is exactly what happens to
that character.
Peter Pan, right? Yeah. That said, man, it's always going to be Robin Williams for me. That childlike personality allows him to be a good Peter, but he is a comedian. We know all comedians have a little bit of a sad side. And so that allowed him to capture that older version. And so I'm just always going to be a Robin Williams person, but
Yeah.
I do totally think Kevin Kline could have done that role.
They're in
and
the
it would have been
same
great.
wheelhouse.
Yeah.
They're in the same. I probably could see it in some universe, but just because that's a childhood, sometimes I understand. I just cannot be objective, and that's one that would be hard.
Yeah. I would like to also see him up against Dustin Hoffman. I think that could have been interesting.
Yeah.
But another one for casting what ifs. Oh, are you having a thought? I don't want
And
to
I'm
burst
just
out.
thinking.
Okay.
I'm not. It's not something I'm going to share. It's me processing through something, trying to envision those two together, and then thinking, have they really never been together? It's
Right.
a lot all at one time.
Yeah, totally. I get it. Sigourney Weaver turned down the role of Celeste.
Uh-huh.
And that eventually goes to Sally Field. What's your thoughts there?
It's tough for me to see, but honestly, I don't know that much about Sigourney Weaver, which may be a crazy thing to acknowledge. Alien is my touch point with her. And so I don't know that much about her, but it just feels like she wouldn't be quite over the top. I actually was thinking, because Sigourney Weaver and Gina Davis have very similar faces to me. I was thinking about Gina Davis could be kind of over the top. She's definitely done that before. But Sigourney Weaver, I can't see, but that might be because I don't know enough about her.
So I just think it's a different energy. Sally Field's casting is funny because she, as I was saying earlier, she has this America's sweetheart persona. That Sigourney Weaver doesn't have that. She's Ripley, to your point,
Right.
from Alien. I think
She's intense.
She is a little bit more intense. I almost would have seen her in the Montana Moorhead.
Yeah, I could
character.
see that. That makes sense.
I do think she could have taken this role on. She basically does it 10 years later in a movie across from Jennifer Love Hewitt, and they're
Heartbreakers.
Yes. It's similar. It's a similar energy where she has to be she has to be to men very attractive, and it has to be something that they're attracted to. But at the same time, when she gets along with her daughter, she's kind of a butthole, but then she has to do a turn at the end. So
Right.
it is for that, a layered and nuanced role. And, even the clothing and stuff, being so dressed up all the time and so fancy and haughty, all of those things I think that she could have done. But yeah, I see her more as Montana Moorhead. Burt Reynolds turns down the lead role. And this is because apparently his then wife, Lonnie Anderson, told him the whole of Hollywood would laugh at her because Reynolds and Sally Field once had a very publicized relationship. So
I thought the juiciness of that was fascinating.
I also I wonder about the truthfulness in that, because it feels like someone would have had to, either Burt Reynolds or Lonnie Anderson would have had to come out and say that. And it seems like it wouldn't have been her if she was so worried that it would be embarrassing for her.
Yeah, I guess. Or maybe a friend, a close personal friend of the two said it.
Nikki has quotation marks up.
Yeah, sorry. I was also trying to process, I'm doing a lot of processing on the fly, about whether that might have come out in their breakup, and some of the drama and juiciness out of their breakup. He would have been and she was so jealous. She wouldn't even let me take this role because I could see something like that happening.
I don't think he was known for not being outspoken when he did interviews.
Especially about her.
What do you think about him being in Kevin Kline's role, though?
I don't see that at all. But I think of Burt Reynolds as too...
I think the arrogant part works.
Yes, but I think there's maybe too much masculine energy, too much burliness, too much manly man.
Right.
Not to say Kevin Kline is not a manly man, but this character didn't come across that way.
That's
was a
well,
sensitivity
he didn't star
to
in a
him.
movie where he wore a leather vest with no shirt underneath for 2.5
Very
hours.
few people do.
So
Very few people.
It is a different energy.
It's a
I think,
different
that
energy.
He brings. It would also have brought it more into the LBT universe, since he would soon go on to be on Evening Shade. So that's something. And then the last one I had was something that you've already
Which maybe is
about.
why I said it. Is this
Gina
Gina Davis? This may be why I said it was embedded in the back of my brain.
And you know what she went to do instead?
Yeah, I probably could guess based on timing. What is it?
Thelma and Louise.
Thelma and Louise, that's right.
And I got to tell you, I can see a lot of people in the Montana
Which
role.
opened this same weekend.
It was the same weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You were doing some movie digging.
I was.
Yeah. So I can see a lot of people in the Montana role.
Yeah.
I can't see Kathy Moriarty doing the Gina Davis role in Thelma and Louise, and you won't know because you haven't seen it, but she's very gentle, and she does have like a term where she gets a little bit more like, huh, but for the most part, she's pretty like a little damsel in distress-ish in some parts, and I just have a really hard time.
Poor Kathy Moriarty, because again, the only reference I have for her embedded in my brain is that character in Casper and now the character here. So whatever else she's done, I may be missing the boat and I may not understand her at all.
Also, no one said that there was going to be a switch the other way, but I was just trying to imagine, like, what would it have been like if we just switched those?
Just swap them out, even Stevens, yeah.
Going to run through some quick cameos here. Lisa Gibbons, who we've already mentioned. Ben Stein is at the writer's table. Stephen Nichols. I didn't know who Stephen Nichols was. Sorry, Stephen. But he's a mainstay who was known for having like a patch in a soap opera. And he is the one who reads off the awards at the beginning of the movie.
Please make me the mainstay who's known for having a patch.
An eye patch. Not like a...
Anything
birth
else?
Control patch. Yeah,
a tobacco patch.
I was working on it. I was trying so hard to get that out. Then Finola Hughes is also there. She is like up against Celeste in like a fake soap opera moment in the clips for the awards. And then John Tesh is also there playing John Tesh. Not exactly a cameo, but I did want to say that we see Willie Garson, who played Stanford Blatch in Sex and the City. He shows up briefly in the writer's room. Sadly, he died in 2021. So it was bittersweet to see him sitting at that table, although he does make a really asinine racist comment.
Oh, so he's that guy.
That's the
He's the racist. Okay. Understood.
Then we have reboots. Not that it's funny to be racist, but, you know.
Yes.
We have reboots and remakes gone awry is the last thing that I wanted to cover. So there was press back in 2011 that Ben Schwartz was going to write a remake of Soapdish. Did you run across that?
Ben Schwartz?
That's right. But it never materialized.
Well, because it's Ben Schwartz.
I would have loved it. I love Ben Schwartz. I don't really know much about his writing, but he cracks me up. And if he brings, and I would have loved to have seen him in the role of like David.
Yeah. And I would love to know like what his touchstone is to Soapdish. It came up randomly in Arrested Development recently. There's a reference to Soapdish. Okay. They're in prison, and George Bluth is in prison, and he says, and something like in a melee broke out because turns out prisoners don't like Soapdish or whatever. And it just resonated with me that I think it's a deep, deep cut reference for a lot of people. And I just want to know so badly what their touch point is to it. Like you were a 6-year-old watching it.
Right.
Ben Schwartz, what's his deal?
Right.
When did he come across Soapdish? And what was his reaction?
I know.
Time will tell.
Ben.
Come on.
Come on the show. All right. So, and then this is my very last thing to share. At the beginning of 2022, it was announced it will be remade for Paramount TV Plus as a series. Whoopi had already signed on to reprise her role from the original movie as Rose, but it is 2024 and I didn't see anything else about it.
And I'm so stuck in time that I was like, so it's coming soon because I think it's still like 2022. So there we go.
Oh, that's just life right now, isn't it?
It's such a time warp. What is that about?
That's it.
All right.
Yeah. That's that feels really lackluster. And that's a Soapdish. Okay.
That's good.
It's worse.
I was just going to say thanks for listening, folks. But that's a Soapdish too. As always, we'd love to hear what you thought of Soapdish. Do you have another cult classic or favorite? Bonus points if it falls into the Southern category or has a Designing Women tie-in. We'd love to consider it for a future season. In the meantime, we'd love everyone to follow along with us and engage. A great place to let us know what you thought of Soapdish or other movies. Instagram and Facebook at Sweet Tea and TV. TikTok at Sweet Tea TV Pod. We're on YouTube at Sweet Tea TV 7371. Our email address is sweetteattvpod@gmail.com, and our website is www.sweetteatv.com. You can support the show by visiting our website that I just mentioned. There's a Support Us tab, or free and cheap, you could just leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. So this special episode, Selena, wraps up our regular season 5 of Sweet Tea and TV.
Just a short 67 episodes. later.
I aged some through this process.
Yeah, that's life then.
But we are wrapped up now, so we're going to take a couple weeks off. We're going to catch our breath. There's a vacation coming for you, Selena.
Yeah, I'm out of here, guys.
She's gone. I'll be on my own for a couple weeks. I'll be wrapping up the end of the school year with my kids. So we'll be taking a breather. And then we're prepping right now for season 5. We are season 6. Season 6. We're genuinely not sure what we're doing with Sweet T&TV moving forward, but we will know come Saturday, right, Selena?
Yeah. We're gonna have every one of life's little questions figured out.
In the meantime, we're leaning toward doing the same thing we did at the end of last season, which is do some replays, some of the greatest hits of Sweet T&TV.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've found every season we seem to be finding a little bit more of the Designing Women hive
fan club.
And so, yeah, and I think as we're like finding those people, like it's helpful, I think, for them to know that, hey, there's a lot of seasons of this. Get back in there, you know, and so that they can see all this other hard work we've been doing in case they're interested.
I like to think of it as the Sweet T&TV archives.
Yes, it is.
This last season would truly be an archive, a hallway of 50 episodes. We do have a lot, especially this last season, of main episodes and then extra sugars to go with it. So we're going to try to pull out a few for a couple of weeks and let folks kind of get into it and see what's going on. At least that's what we're leaning toward today. More to come. So stay tuned. Keep us in your podcast feed so that you'll find us when we do drop a new episode.
I thought you were going to say keep us in your prayers.
That's lovely. You know what? I like to be prayed for. Makes me feel good.
We'll keep you in our prayers as well.
Thank you for listening. We've enjoyed hearing from you, and we appreciate you inviting more listeners into the Sweet T&TV family.
Oh, that's nice. Well, I guess we know what that means.
What does it mean, Selena?
It means we'll see you around the bend.
Bye.